The Super Bowl. Everyone loves it. You love it. I love it. And with Super Bowl 58 coming up just around the corner, we're going to look back at all 57 Super Bowls, starting from the 1966 season all the way to last year, the 2022 season. A lot of work and research did go into this video, so I hope you enjoy. Now, again, this will be subjective, so I'm going to rank them based on a couple things. How good was the game? Who were the two teams in it? Their quarterbacks? And what was the impact left on this game? Do we still talk about it, even if it was almost 40 years ago? Now, we're going to take a look. And there have been some really great Super Bowls, and there have been some bad ones as well. So we're going to start off with what, in my opinion, are the 10 worst Super Bowls. Coming in last place, and what, in my opinion, is the worst Super Bowl ever, we got Super Bowl 48 between the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. Womp, womp, womp. So, there was a lot of hype for this game. The Seahawks had the best defense, and the Broncos had not just had maybe the best offense in NFL history. Peyton Manning had maybe the best season by a quarterback. There was so much hype going to this game. It felt like we were not just getting the two best teams that year, but maybe two of the best teams of all time. And it was over from the first play.
Defense first, and then the first snap of the game goes into the end zone. It looked like Peyton Manning was audibling, but the center snaps the football. No Sean Marino hops on it 12 seconds into the game.
Unfortunately, a very disappointing game that had, like I said, not just two of the best teams that year, but maybe of all time. But again, credit to Seattle. Their defense was their strong suit, and it completely dominated. So, I guess defense does win championships. Next up, we have Super Bowl 24 between the Denver Broncos and the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners won big. They scored the most points in Super Bowl history, and that is also the largest blowout in Super Bowl history, 45 points. And it sucks because you have a very good QB matchup between Joe Montana and John Elway, two of the best quarterbacks of the time. It was just a dud. Montana had a fantastic game. The great Jerry Rice played good. And John Elway and the Broncos were terrible. Very disappointing game. Next up, we have Super Bowl 27, featuring my Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. This was the third of the Bills' 4 straight Super Bowl losses, and it was their worst. The Dallas won 52-17, and heck, they could have gotten more points if Don Beebe didn't knock the ball out of Leon Lett's hand. And look, this Bills team was really, really good. You had Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, Bruce Smith, a great team. And then you had my Dallas Cowboys, who had Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman leading the way, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin, and a few other great players on that team. And it was a dog battle. I mean, Troy Aikman had a phenomenal game. It was just not Buffalo's night. But it was for my Cowboys. Next up, we had the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants. This was the Ravens' historic 2000 defense that allowed, I think, only like 11 points per game. And their defense was so good. Their offense was led by Trent Dilfer, and they were going up against a Giants team that was led by Kerry Collins. Not the most exciting QB matchup in the world. Baltimore's defense came out to play. Kerry Collins was terrible. Trent Dilfer really didn't do anything. He was on the winning side, though. Ray Lewis absolutely murdered the Giants. I mean, murdered. And I don't know why I'm using the word murder. The Ravens' defense was great, but that's all people remember. Next up, we have Super Bowl 20, and it features the Chicago Bears blowing out the New England Patriots. Now, we all know the '85 Bears, the Super Bowl Shuffle, led by Ditka, Buddy Ryan, Walter Payton, Mike Singletary, Dan Hampton, so many great players that we could be here forever naming names. And what people still consider the greatest defense ever. Playing against a New England Patriots team that is pretty forgettable. And if you know the 1985 season, the Bears went 15-1. That one loss was to Dan Marino's Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins did make the AFC Championship that year, which they did lose, unfortunately, to the Patriots. And I don't know if the Dolphins would have won, but it would have been really cool to see the Dolphins and their high-power offense going up against the Bears' defense. And their offense could keep up with the Bears, so Would have been interesting, but we're left with a pretty terrible game. Next up, we have the Washington Redskins taking on the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 22. And before we get started, I'm going to be referring to the Washington Redskins as so because that was their name at the time. And if I discuss them in future videos from 2020 to 2021, they will be the football team and then now the Commanders, and then later on when they eventually change that name again. But since they were called the Redskins, that's what we're going to call them, okay? And I'll just say this, boy, do the Broncos suck in Super Bowls. When they lose Super Bowls, they lose. So it's actually weird. The Broncos were actually up 10-0 after the first quarter, and then the Redskins scored 35 points all in the second quarter. 35 of their 42 points came in one quarter. And this game did have its moments. Timmy Smith rushed for 236 yards, and that was basically the highlight of his career. He was one of the biggest one-game wonders. And then you had Doug Williams becoming the first African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. Had a very good performance, but this was a bad game. We have the Los Angeles Raiders taking on the Redskins in Super Bowl 18. Now, this Redskins team was very good. Maybe people don't talk about how good this team was. You had Joe Theismann and John Riggins and a bunch of other great guys. And then you had the Raiders, who also were very good. Howie Long, Marcus Allen, and we all remember Marcus Allen's great run. Paper should have been a better game. And it just wasn't. Washington played awful. Theismann had a rough game. Marcus Allen completely ran over them. It was a bloodbath. And one of my favorite moments during the Super Bowl is after the Super Bowl when Pete Rozelle was presenting the trophy to Al Davis. Since Pete Rozelle and Al Davis kind of hated each other, and since Rozelle was buddies with Jack Hancock, the Redskins owner at the time, he spent the entire ceremony talking about the Redskins. It's kind of funny. Next up, we have Super Bowl 37, featuring the Bucks and the Oakland Raiders now. And this is a Super Bowl that, unfortunately, the stories surrounding it are way more interesting than the actual game. So, we all know the story. John Gruden, he was the Raiders coach last year. He was traded to the Buccaneers, and they were going up against each other in the Super Bowl. The Raiders coach, who was named Bill Callahan, apparently like 2 days before the game started, he completely changed the game. It was apparently going to be like a run-heavy offense, and then he changed it to a high-flying pass one. And then Barrett Robbins, the Raiders center, apparently lost it with Callahan, and apparently the day before the Super Bowl, he went missing and they couldn't find him. And it turns out he went to Tijuana, Mexico somehow, and he somehow was able to find his way back to the team hotel. I mean, that is, what I just told you is way more interesting than the Super Bowl itself. And heck, Tim Brown and Jerry Rice have even suggested that maybe Bill Callahan sabotaged the game. Like I said, that is way more interesting than the actual Super Bowl. It was rough. Rich Gannon threw 5 picks. The Bucks, who had a great defense, won this game. Just a pretty unfortunately disappointing game. Next up, we have another Broncos blowout, Super Bowl 12. My Dallas Cowboys, again, beating the Broncos 27-10. And this is something a lot of people don't know. So, the Broncos quarterback was Craig Morton, who, if you're wondering who that is, and no, that's not John Elway you're seeing up there, he was the Cowboys quarterback and was their starter in Super Bowl V, which we're going to get to very soon. So yeah, Craig Morton, he was their starter for a bit. They benched him for Roger Staubach, who was the Cowboys starter this year, and the Cowboys, to be honest, it's shocking they didn't win by more. They had 8 turnovers. Morton threw 4 picks. I think he had a QB rating of 0. An absolute beating that should have been way worse. I don't know how this was only a 17-point win for them. And actually, one of the more interesting facts is this Super Bowl had co-MVPs. It was defensive player Harvey Martin and Randy White. Both of them were co-Super Bowl MVPs. Only time that's ever happened. But yeah, this game was forgettable. Next up, we have my Dallas Cowboys again. I'm trying. See, you can't accuse me of being biased. We have Super Bowl VI. The Cowboys beat the Dolphins 24-3. Look, you had 2 of probably the best teams of the 70s. The Cowboys were probably the best team in the NFC. The Dolphins were one of the best teams in the AFC. We'll get to who was really the best, and I think you know who it is. And it was a pretty uneventful game. Roger Staubach played amazing in that game. He actually threw a touchdown to Bears coach Mike Ditka. Don't know many people actually know that. Very, very one-sided game and not really that memorable. Sweet, we're now done with the 10 worst, and now we're going to move on to the games that were just boring and forgettable. Games that really weren't maybe bad, but nothing to really remember about. The first one on the boring and forgettable list, we have Super Bowl 33, the Broncos beating the Falcons 34-19, and I don't know if you've seen it, but according to SB Nation, this is the worst Super Bowl ever. Now, I think it was kind of meant as a joke in some way to a few other things, but now look, it was cool. John Elway, his final game, got to go out on top. And then we have the Atlanta Falcons, again, a team that I think a lot of people forget was actually in the Super Bowl, and kind of like the New England Patriots against the '85 Bears, we all know it should have been the Minnesota Vikings. Randall Cunningham, Robert Smith, Randy freaking Moss, and Chris Carter should have been them in the game. One of the best offenses ever. If only Gary Anderson could kick, it should have been them. And again, some of the stories about the game are more interesting than the game itself. If you don't know, Eugene Robinson, who I think won the Bart Starr Award and was like the defensive leader and was like the captain, the night before the Super Bowl, he got arrested for soliciting a prostitute by an undercover officer. Which is, again, like I said, funny because he was like the good guy on the team. And I think he allowed like an 80-yard touchdown. Absolutely. It was a beatdown by Denver, and like I said, it should have been the 98 Vikings. Next up, we have Super Bowl IV, the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Minnesota Vikings 23-7. And this game does have some importance to it. This was the second time an AFL team beat an NFL team, and this game is what led to the AFL-NFL merger, which is thankful that we got it. But is there anything can you name me something that you actually remember about this game, even if you were alive then? Nope, exactly. Next up, we're going to go to Super Bowl VIII. The Dolphins beat the Vikings 24-7. And pretty similar score. The Dolphins were, again, very good in the 70s. The Vikings, they were really good in the 70s. They went to 4 Super Bowls and somehow lost all 4. Very good teams then. Fran Tarkenton and Alan Page captaining both sides of the ball. It's unfortunate, but the Dolphins won this. Next up, we have Super Bowl XI. The Raiders beat the Vikings 32-14. Now this Super Bowl was the only win by the great John Madden, and they absolutely blew out the Vikings. Fred Biletnikoff absolutely torched them. This Raiders team actually had a few really great guys on it, the best teams of that decade, and they absolutely dominated the Vikings. Next up, we have another Raiders win, Super Bowl XV. The Raiders beat the Eagles 27-10, and now, the Raiders team is actually special. If you don't know, they were actually the first wildcard team to win a Super Bowl. So that was actually pretty impressive, but there's nothing else to remember. The Eagles, they had Ron Jaworski, who was a solid quarterback, but not like an all-time great. Raiders had Jim Plunkett, maybe the worst quarterback to win multiple Super Bowls. Nothing really memorable about this game. Next up, we have Super Bowl IX, the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Vikings 16-6. And this game was 2-0 at the half. Now, this Pittsburgh Steelers team in the 70s was loaded. I mean, I think almost every position on this team is in the Hall of Fame. We could be here all day listing the great players who played for those teams. And they beat the Vikings pretty easily. Tarkenton had a rough night. The Steelers absolutely dominated them on defense. And it was a pretty boring game. Franco Harris got a touchdown lead to put the game away. Very boring game. Next up, we have Super Bowl XXVI. The Washington Redskins beat the Buffalo Bills 37-24. And while it might look close on paper, this game was a beatdown. Buffalo scored a few points late in garbage time, so it made it look kind of close. And this Washington Redskins team of 1991 is considered one of the best teams of its era, and it really is. This was a loaded roster. Heck, this Bills team was good. On paper, this was not a bad matchup, and it turned out to be an absolute disappointment. Over here, we got Super Bowl VII. The Dolphins beat the Washington Redskins 24-7, and what was the lowest scoring Super Bowl until we'll get to that one. This game was bad. Like, really bad. It probably had maybe one of the worst plays in Super Bowl history.
A 42-yard attempt by Yepremian. Snap, set down. The kick is blocked. Rolling loose on the field. It is picked up by Garrow. He tries to throw a pass. Deflected in the air. Grabbed by Bass. 40, 35, 30. He's going to score. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown.
And the fact Miami still won it with maybe that dumb play is insane. Now, this is obviously the 1972 Dolphins who finished the year undefeated. Didn't play their best football that game, but hey, they won it, and they're undefeated. Next up, we have Super Bowl 53. The New England Patriots beat the LA Rams 13-3. And yes, you're probably wondering, why do I have this game maybe a little higher than some people? Yes, this game was boring. It was defense this, defense that. Really weren't that many iconic plays in the game. Yes, it was maybe a little unemotional watching the Patriots win their 6th Super Bowl. But here's why I put it higher. I like offense as much as anyone, but I think defenses deserve a little credit every now and then. And both these defenses played amazing. Bill Belichick did a great job. Wade Phillips, a great defensive coordinator, did also a good job. Yes, the Super Bowl was boring, and the only play that I really remember was this Gronk catch, but I don't think it's as bad as people try to make it out to be. Like I said, it was a close game for the most part, and I don't know about you. Would you rather watch a 3-3 game in the 4th quarter or a 30-0 blowout? That can depend. Now, I think what we all agree was the most disappointing part was that Maroon 5 did not play Sweet Victory. I'm still not over that. Moving up on the list, we have Super Bowl 40, Super Bowl XL, or as I like to call it, Super Bowl Extra Large. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Seahawks 21-10, and I know, this game is remembered for some pretty questionable officiating that went against the Seahawks. And heck, I actually forget the Seahawks were actually in the Super Bowl before the Legion of Boom era. This game was pretty unmemorable. Big Ben probably had the worst game by a Super Bowl winning QB. Pittsburgh had a very good defense that did shut down the Seahawks offense, and to some, they got a little help from the flag. Like I said, I don't think a Super Bowl should be remembered for questionable officiating. No, I feel like almost every Super Bowl has a weird call here and there. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Jerome Bettis, final game from Detroit, got to win it there. That was nice, but yeah, the Super Bowl was not that good. Now we have Super Bowl 29. The San Francisco 49ers beat the San Diego Chargers 49-26. They should still be in San Diego. That whole relocation was stupid. And there are some moments in this game people do remember. Steve Young threw 6 touchdown passes, maybe the greatest performance by a quarterback in a Super Bowl. The Chargers were led by Stan Humphries. How many of you know who that guy is? This is actually the highest scoring Super Bowl of all time. 75 points combined between both teams, but it was a blowout. The Niners never really trailed through the game, and San Diego did score late to kind of make it close, but this was not really anything special of a game. Here we go to Super Bowl II. The Green Bay Packers beat the Oakland Raiders 33-14. And to be honest, I actually forget the Raiders made a Super Bowl before John Madden. The Packers beat the Raiders pretty convincingly, and this was kind of seen as a bad look for this game, as the Green Bay Packers had beaten 2 AFL teams pretty badly, and there was kind of the talk that maybe these AFL teams could not beat the NFL teams and that they weren't on the same tier. People kind of viewed it as what we would see today as an NFL team taking on a college team. But we will get to what game saved it. So this game's pretty, in my opinion, unremarkable. It was Vince Lombardi's final game as a Packer, so it was one of the all-time greats win on their last chance, but that's it. Next up is Super Bowl 50, the Denver Broncos beating the Carolina Panthers 24-10. And I don't know about you, but I remember feeling like there was just not a lot of hype for this game. It felt like Panthers are going to destroy the Broncos, it's going to be Manning's final game. Felt like that was really the narrative for this game. And look, this Panthers team, 15-1, very good. Cam Newton won the MVP. And then the Broncos had a very good defense. Now, Peyton Manning's maybe my favorite NFL player of all time, and it was nice to see him win, go off into the sunset. He was not the reason they won. Their defense is why, and Von Miller had maybe one of the best defensive Super Bowl performances ever. The Broncos' defense was great. Not a great Super Bowl, but the Panthers were terribly offensively. The Broncos really weren't that much better, but they did win. So, like I said, not a great game, but it was awesome to see Peyton Manning go off into the sunset with a win. Up next is Super Bowl 21 between the Giants and Broncos. Giants win 39-20. So, weird game. The Broncos were up 10-9 at halftime. And I don't know what happened, but the Giants completely steamrolled them in the second half. So, This Giants team had a great defense. Lawrence Taylor, in my opinion, the best defensive player ever, and Phil Simms has had one of the more underrated Super Bowl performances. He had 3 touchdowns and only 3 incompletions. Like, statistically, one of the best Super Bowl performances ever, and I don't see a lot of people talk about it. So, like I said, a weird game, a tale of 2 halves, but I don't think a lot of people really remember this Super Bowl. The final one of the boring and forgettable tier is Super Bowl 41, the Colts beating the Bears 29-17, and Rex Grossman versus Peyton Manning. Somehow that was a Super Bowl matchup. And you can tell why. Now, Peyton Manning and the Colts really didn't even play that good in the game, but hey, when you have to rely on Rex Grossman to win you a Super Bowl, that helps. Highlight people remember is the Devin Hester return, but that's really it. And it also had maybe the greatest Super Bowl halftime show ever with Prince, but this game was not good. The next part of this list is the disappointing games. Games that just didn't live up to the hype, unfortunately. The first one on the disappointing list is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bucs won 31-9, and there was a lot of hype. We have Tom Brady, who is definitely the greatest quarterback of all time. And then you got Patrick Mahomes, who is... It's too early to tell in my opinion, but he's possibly in the conversation. This was kind of talked about. This game was compared to as Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. The Bucs won this game pretty easily. Now, the Chiefs had some injuries on the offensive line. The Bucs had a very good pass rush. And Mahomes, I think, was banged up a little bit, so that unfortunately hurt the Chiefs. The Bucs, Tom Brady threw 2 tutties to Gronk. It's cool to see those 2 guys connect, but unfortunately, this game should have been better than what it ended up being. On over to Super Bowl 31, the Packers beat the Patriots 35-21. So you had the old gunslinger Brett Favre stealing the Patriots' hearts, just like he steals money from the poor. So this game had its moments here and there. A special teams player won Super Bowl MVP, Desmond Howard. Yes, I don't know how many people actually know that, even though probably should have before. There's really nothing to that, in my opinion, impressive about that game. Kind of close in the first half, but Packers ended up winning, and it's really all to say. Next up, and this one might be the most disappointing Super Bowl of all time. Super Bowl 19, the 49ers beat the Dolphins 38-16. In my opinion, this is maybe the best QB matchup of all time. Joe Montana, Dan Marino. People say he's the second best quarterback behind Brady, and I would say that. And then you had Dan Marino, who had, at the time, one of the best QB seasons ever by a quarterback. Still is. Broke many records, was phenomenal. The game was a disappointment. Marino did. It was 10-7 after the first quarter, but that was really it for Miami. They never got back into the end zone. San Fran won easily. A disappointing game, which should have been a lot better, with 2 of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Next up is Super Bowl V. The Baltimore Colts beat the Dallas Cowboys 16-13. And you want to talk about Super Bowls where both teams played like trash. 11 combined turnovers. It was a bad game. Heck, the Dallas Cowboys quarterback was actually Craig Morton, who I mentioned before, who didn't seem like he played that good in Super Bowls. This was actually the first Super Bowl to end on a field goal. Jim O'Brien for the Colts kicked a field goal to win the game for them. This is a bad game, but it was kind of entertaining, so that's why I give it to them. Next up, Super Bowl 28. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Buffalo Bills 30-13. And again, Dallas Cowboy fan here. This was the final of the Bills' 4 Super Bowl losses, and kind of a weird game. Buffalo was up 13-6. Cowboys had a rough game offensively. Aikman had a rough first half. And then Thurman Thomas fumbled the ball very early in the second half, and all the momentum went to Dallas. Emmitt Smith completely ran over them. It was just a rough day for Buffalo. And the Cowboys won their second Super Bowl. And then Jerry decided to get rid of Jimmy Johnson. How's that worked out for you? Well, it didn't work out that bad at first, because in Super Bowl XXX, the Cowboys beat the Steelers 27-17. And this game was kind of meh. Dallas played okay. Neil O'Donnell sucked. He gave Larry Brown, who is maybe the worst player to win Super Bowl MVP, nothing really that great other than Barry Switzer, who maybe the worst coach ever to win a Super Bowl. Not saying he was a bad college coach, but he was not the reason Dallas won. And yeah, this was the last great moment for the Dallas Cowboys. Now we have what is the first ever Super Bowl. That's right, Super Bowl I. It wasn't even called the Super Bowl. It was called the AFL-NFL World Championship Game, which is a way more creative name than the Super Bowl. The Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10. And look, it's an important NFL game. And it was kind of fitting that we had the Packers, who were probably the most successful team pre-Super Bowl era. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who were founded by their owner, Lamar Hunt, kind of helped start the AFL and actually was the one who pitched the name Super Bowl. So kind of fitting that we got these two teams. And it was 14-10 at halftime, but Green Bay completely turned on the gas. Bart Starr had a great game. That Packers team was very good. And this game did start what we have as the Super Bowl, but I don't think this is a game that many people think of when they think of great Super Bowls. Next up, Super Bowl XVII. The Washington Redskins beat the Miami Dolphins 27-17, and this was a decent game here and there. John Riggins had a very nice game. This game was actually famous because it was actually internationally broadcast, the first one to ever do it, and kind of really the only notable thing about this game. Not a bad game, but not a great game. Next up, Super Bowl XVI, the first game called by John Madden, fun fact, who was called the most Super Bowls ever. The 49ers beat the Cincinnati Bengals 26-21, and this game's, again, kind of weird. So the Niners were up 20-0 at half, and Cincy made it a little interesting, but San Fran did hold on. It was the first of Super Bowl rings for Joe Montana and what would become the 49er dynasty of the 80s. Had its moments, but not great. We're over to the good games. These were games that were, I would say, were really good games. Maybe didn't do enough to crack the top 10, but each of these games were good, and you'll see as we move up why each of these games were good. Might be the most important Super Bowl. Super Bowl III, the New York Jets beat the Baltimore Colts 16-7. Fun fact, this is the only Super Bowl that cannot have a rematch. And yes, the Jets have won a Super Bowl, but it's a pretty important one. So why is this game important? So when the NFL and AFL decided to create the Super Bowl, the Green Bay Packers of the NFL completely dominated whatever they played in the. There was talk that maybe that the AFL could just not compete with the NFL. Like I said, it would be what if the USFL, XFL decided to go up against an NFL team. And that result, and the Colts were, I think, 19-point favorites. They were heavy favorites, a very good team. And then Joe Namath, right before the game, guaranteed the Jets would win. And he was right. They won 16-7. Really wasn't all that close. But it was big. It showed that, holy shoot, the AFL can compete with the NFL and that this is something special we have. So, maybe not the most exciting game ever, but maybe the most important game. Bowl 14, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the LA Rams 31-19. And the Rams were actually up at halftime, and then the Steelers came back and won. And it's actually weird, Terry Bradshaw won Super Bowl MVP, and though he did throw more picks than he did touchdowns, did enough to win a pretty solid Super Bowl. Maybe not one of the best in my opinion, but dang good Super Bowl, and what would be the fourth of the Pittsburgh Steelers' great dynasty of the 70s. Moving on over is Super Bowl 45, the Packers beating the Steelers 31-25, and I'm sure this is up on the NFL's dream Super Bowl list, and look, you have Aaron Rodgers and Big Ben going up against it. Fun fact, both these teams don't have cheerleaders because it's cold in Green Bay and it's probably not a good idea to have one around Big Ben. Anyway, this was a decently entertaining game. A few moments, obviously, Aaron Rodgers throwing touchdowns to Greg Jennings, who put the team on his back. So, this was a solid game. It's definitely maybe not the greatest game ever, but solid. Up next is Super Bowl 39 between the Patriots and Eagles. Patriots win 24-21, and this was a decent game, very patriotic Super Bowl. Now, I think there's a little bit more about this game. Did Donovan McNabb throw up? Was he hungover? Or is T.O. just saying T.O. things? It's also more interesting this game was in Jacksonville of all places. Weird place to have a Super Bowl personally, but But this was a solid game, not one of the best in my opinion. A very fun game, a few moments here and there. Next up, we have Super Bowl X or Super Bowl X. Elon Musk would be happy with this. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Dallas Cowboys 21-17, and we had probably the two best teams of the 1970s, the Cowboys and the Steelers. Both were great, littered with Hall of Famers on almost every position. And this was a solid game. The Pittsburgh Steelers scored late in the fourth quarter to win the game. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense absolutely murdered Roger Staubach, and call it the Steel Curtain for a reason. Both of these teams were very good, and this was, in my opinion, a movie trailer for what would be a greater game later on, and we're going to get to that soon. This is a very good game between the two best teams in the 70s. Okay, now we have Super Bowl 47. The Baltimore Ravens beat the 49ers 34-31, and this game was big. You had John Harbaugh, coach of the Ravens, Jim Harbaugh, coach of the 49ers, two brothers going at it head-to-head. The Ravens were up 28-6. They were dominating the 49ers. They couldn't get anything going, and then, for whatever reason that we'll never know, the power went out in the Louisiana Superdome. Who knows what happened, but the Niners made an epic comeback. They got within 5. They were driving down the field, and then everybody's favorite quarterback that we still talk about for some reason, Colin Kaepernick, threw a pass to a sorry receiver like Michael Crabtree. Threw a pass to Michael Crabtree, which got a little touchy here and there, but no flag. The Ravens hold on, take an intentional safety, win 34-31. A very good and memorable Super Bowl. Next up, we have a Super Bowl not too long ago. 54, the Chiefs beat the 49ers 31-20. And yes, Jimmy Garoppolo was in a Super Bowl, which is kind of funny to think. These were both very solid teams, and then here's some awesome moments. We're up 20-10. Mahomes was having a terrible game. And then he threw that big pass to Tyreek Hill on like 3rd and long that seemed to give them all the momentum, and the Niners just fell apart. The Chiefs scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to win this game. A very good game. Maybe I don't have it as high as some people because, Mahomes versus Jimmy G isn't exactly the Super Bowl dream we have, but a very good Super Bowl, and heck, maybe this year's Super Bowl between the two will be better or just as good or terrible. The next one up is Super Bowl 46. The New York Giants beat the Patriots 21-17, and both sequels are not as good as the original, but this was a solid sequel, and it had its awesome moments as well. Wes Welker's drop pass. We know Tom Brady can't run and catch the ball at the same time. We had the New York Giants drive, Eli Manning to Mario Manningham, Ahmad Bradshaw scoring, and Tom Brady's Hail Mary coming up just short. A solid game. Now we have what was the last Super Bowl with a somewhat creative logo, Super Bowl 44, between the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. And in terms of QB matchup, Drew Brees and Peyton Manning, what more can you ask for? The Colts were up 10-6, and then Sean Payton calls for the onside kick. All the momentum swings in the Saints' favor. They get up by a touchdown. Is Manning going to lead a game-winning drive? Throws a pick six. Saints win. And it's obviously one of the more emotional wins. This is right after Hurricane Katrina. A very emotional win. Next up is Super Bowl 38 between the New England Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. Patriots win 32-29. And Super Bowl's probably more famous for its halftime show, though probably not the reason that it wants to be remembered. Fun fact, that's actually what led to the creation of YouTube. The New England Patriots, this was their second Super Bowl of what would be their great NFL dynasty, and they took on a Panthers Cinderella team that no one expected to be there. Jake Delhomme somehow made it to a Super Bowl. It was 16-14 and then somehow in the fourth quarter things went nuts. It was tied 29, and then Tom Brady went down the field, got out of humanitarian field goal range, kicked it. Patriots win. A really good Super Bowl. Now we have Super Bowl 32. The Broncos beat the Packers 31-24, and there was actually a lot going on with this game. Number one, the NFC had dominated the AFC. I think they had won like 13 straight. And then you had the Packers, who were hoping to win their second Super Bowl. And then you had John Elway's Denver Broncos. Elway, he was getting up there in age. Probably he was running out of time to win his first ring, and he had a reputation of not exactly playing well in the Super Bowl. Didn't play well in this game, but everybody remembers his helicopter dive when you can tell how badly he wanted to win this game. Terrell Davis had a great performance. This was a very good game. Next up, I so badly want to put the Super Bowl up higher. Super Bowl 56, the Rams beat the Bengals 23-20. again, I so wanted to put this one higher, but there were other Super Bowls I think had a bigger impact than this one, so I knocked it down. And you had the Cincinnati Bengals, who were one of the more pleasant surprises that we had seen in a while. And then you had the LA Rams, and this game had some awesome moments. The Bengals took a lead. It looks like where they're going to be it, and then Cooper Kupp rips their hearts out. Aaron Donald forces Joe Burrow's pass to go incomplete. A very heartbreaking loss for the Bengals. A great game with both great offense and defense. I had a lot of fun watching this game. I so badly wanted to put it higher, but I think this is a good spot. And then we have what, in my opinion, is the first great Super Bowl. Super Bowl XIII. The Steelers beat the Cowboys 35-31. The two best teams of the 70s with the two best quarterbacks, and both these teams put on a show. Roger Staubach versus Joe Montana. The Steel Curtain versus the Doomsday Defense. So many great moments, so many great players. This game is probably more remembered for Jackie Smith's drop touchdown pass, which led to Dallas having to settle for a field goal, which proved to be the difference. When you think a battle of the two best teams of this was a battle of not just the two best teams of the year, but two of the best teams of the era. This is what the Super Bowl is all about, and this is, in my opinion, the first great Super Bowl. Okay, you have sat here long enough. Let's look at what are, in my opinion, the 10 best Super Bowls. Again, this will be divisive, but I think you'll agree with what are on here. Let me know what you think. All right, let's see it. At number 10, Super Bowl 23, the San Francisco 49ers beat the Cincinnati Bengals 20-16. Down by 3, 92 yards to go. Joe Montana proves why he's one of the all-time clutch quarterbacks and leads a game-winning drive to give the 49ers a win, and absolutely, again, rip the Bengals' hearts out. A very good game indeed, with maybe the greatest Super Bowl drive of all time. Next up, we had Super Bowl 36, and you gotta give a little context. The Super Bowl was moved back a week because of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So they changed the logo, it had a very American feel to it at the time, it united a lot of people. They had U2's emotional halftime performance. You had itself a very emotional game. So, the St. Louis Rams, they were looking like the next NFL dynasty. They went 14-2, Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, and Torrey Holt, making up the greatest show on turf. Going up against the New England Patriots, and while we love to think of the New England Patriots as the evil bad guys, they were far from it in this game. They were underdogs. They started off 0-2. Drew Bledsoe got hurt, so they were forced for the rest of the year to start this guy who was picked in the 6th round with the 199th overall pick named Tom Brady. Yeah, you guys all know this story, but again, it is weird to think. And heck, the Patriots were up 17-3, but the Rams did tie it up. And people know John Madden told the Patriots that they should take a knee and go to overtime.
Patriots, with this field position, you have to just run the clock out. You have to play for overtime now.
But Tom Brady and the Patriots chose no. They chose to drive down the field. They got into field goal range for Adam Vinatieri to win, and that's what happened.
Here comes one of greater importance if he makes it, and it's right down the pipe.
And heck, a lot of people thought this was a fluky Super Bowl win, but turned out that it was going to be the first of many. And so it's easy to kind of forget how we think of the Patriots today, but this is definitely one of the most remembered Super Bowls. This is definitely one of the most impactful Super Bowls of all time. At number 8, we have last year's Super Bowl, Super Bowl 57. The Chiefs beating the Eagles 38-35. A high-scoring game, a great duel between two quarterbacks, Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Two very good offensive teams. We count out Mahomes. We chose to count out Mahomes, and he led a very good comeback. Kadarius Toney had a huge punt return that set up a Chiefs touchdown. I wonder how many people remember that now. And we had a very controversial moment. James Bradbury, maybe a little bit of a ticky-tacky hold, which may have soured some people's taste of the game, including myself. But I think this is a game that we're going to be talking about for a while. Fun game. I had so much fun watching this game. I enjoyed it, and like I said, we're going to be talking about this game for a while. At number 7, Super Bowl 34 between the St. Louis Rams and the Tennessee Titans. They should still be in St. Louis probably, but that's not the point. So, the Rams, hoping to be. They signed Trent Green to be their quarterback. Tore his ACL in the preseason, so they were forced to rely on Kurt Warner, who went from a grocery store boy to an arena football legend to playing in NFL Europe to being the Rams' starting quarterback, and he became an MVP with Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, and Isaac Bruce, and we all know it, the greatest show on turf, going up against the Tennessee Titans. And this was their first season as the Tennessee Titans. Remember, they were the Houston Oilers, then the Tennessee Oilers, and this was their first year as the Titans. Steve McNair and Eddie George made for a very fun offensive duo. Both these teams been in the Super Bowl. It was tight. It was close. Kurt Warner looked like he put the Rams up by a touchdown. However, Steve McNair was driving down the field. Pass to Kevin Dyson. He dives. Mike Jones tackles him.
From the 10, probably the final play of the game in regulation. It is caught by Dyson. Can he get in? No, he cannot. Mike Jones made the tackle.
1 yard short. 1 yard short. All of these receiving yards Kevin Dyson had in that game, he was 1 yard short of potentially tying it. One of the best endings in Super Bowl history. At number 6, Super Bowl 25. The New York Giants beat the Buffalo Bills 20-19, decided by only 1 point. And this was a very thrilling game. It had obviously it starts off with Whitney Houston's epic national anthem performance. And this game was very good. You had the Giants and their great defense and the Bills offense. The Giants defense did hold down the Buffalo Bills, but they started to drive. They decided they were going to try a 47-yard field goal. Scott Norwood kicks it.
No good. Wide right.
No good. Wide right. And has gone on to define a franchise, unfortunately. A very crushing loss, in my opinion, the most heartbreaking loss in Super Bowl history. Again, one of the best endings in Super Bowl history and a very memorable one. Also, the ending of this game inspired Ace Ventura, so I think it deserves points for that. Next up, at number 5, Super Bowl 52. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the New England Patriots 41-33. So, the New England Patriots had a very good team going into this game. They were going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who were the number 1 seed in the NFC, but they were underdogs. They had Carson Wentz, who was having an MVP year, tore his ACL, so they were forced to turn to backup QB Nick Foles. It's a high-scoring shootout. We had probably one of the I remember it was 4th down. I was questioning why the Eagles were going for it on 4th down when they had a gimme field goal. I quickly saw why.
4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
One of the best plays and gutsiest plays in NFL history. Tom Brady threw for 500 yards and still lost. Foles became a legend in Philadelphia. I hate Philly so much, but this was a dang good game. I'll give it to them. At number 4, Super Bowl 43 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals. Now we have the Arizona Cardinals, also led by Kurt Warner and Edgerrin James and Larry Fitzgerald, versus the Steelers with Big Ben, Hines Ward, and James Harrison. Both these teams, the Cardinals, who were massive underdogs, going up against the Steelers, and it was a little rough. It was 20-7. You had James Harrison's iconic pick six. However, Kurt Warner got them back. Larry Fitzgerald had a clutch touchdown catch, and it looked like they could possibly win their first Super Bowl, but nope.
Left, Washington outside left. Roethlisberger has time, throws to the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Holmes.
Maybe the greatest touchdown catch in Super Bowl history. A great game full of great plays. This is definitely a game for the history books. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. Number 3, Super Bowl 51. The New England Patriots beat the Atlanta Falcons 34-28. And this game has another nickname that's been known as 28-3. And it has gone on to define the Falcons. They were up 28-3. New England's defense could not stop them. They got their defense, which had been below average, got a pick six on Tom Brady. It looked like it was going to be one of the most embarrassing Super Bowl losses ever. And it did turn out to be one of the most embarrassing Super Bowl losses ever, just not the way I think Atlanta was hoping. The Patriots started to slowly chip away. They got a fumble on Matt Ryan. They cut it to a one-touchdown game. Julio Jones made a great catch. All the Falcons had to do was run some clock and kick a field goal. Who knows what was going through Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn's heads. Matt Ryan takes a sack. They get a holding call, knocked out of field goal range, forced to punt. Tom Brady leads them down the field.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football, and they're saying it's a catch. Alford knocked it up into the air, and let's see who comes down with it. Oh, that's a catch.
Ties the game at 28-all. It goes to overtime, the first Super Bowl to ever go to. Patriots win the toss, drive down the field and win.
Toss to White. He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback!
I think this game was almost 6 years ago. We still talk about it. It was a great game. It's gone on to define one quarterback and also define a franchise. And I think that's all you need from a game. Super Bowl 42, the New York Giants beat the New England Patriots 17-14. The New England Patriots. This was the 16-0 year. They won every single regular season game. You had Tom Brady throwing 50 touchdowns, 23 of which were to Randy Moss. You had Wes Welker, one of the best offenses ever, going up against Eli Manning's New York Giants, who were 10-6. They were a wild card team, had a very up and down season. There was talk that maybe they were one of the worst teams to ever make the Super Bowl. But that's what we thought. The Giants kept it close. The Patriots offense could not get anything going. Bill Belichick, the greatest coach ever, seemed to make some questionable calls here and there. Patriots could never get ahead. The Giants were down 24-10. All the Patriots needed was a stop, and they could talk about having maybe the greatest team in NFL history. But Eli Manning and David Tyree had other plans.
Pressure from Thomas off the edge. Eli Manning stays on his feet. Airs it out down the field. It is caught by Tyree. Inside the 25 and a timeout taken.
Oh my God. This ball's thrown and Tyree just goes up for it like a basketball player. Harrison trying to knock it down. And Eli, man, I don't know how he got out of there. I thought he was on the ground and then he came out of the pile and just slings it. That's a great catch by David Tyree.
And now with 59 seconds left, the Giants needing a touchdown. The ball is at the New England 24.
David Tyree, a fifth-string receiver, mainly on special teams. Didn't matter what he did from then on out. He had cemented himself in NFL legacy. Eli Manning threw a touchdown to Plaxico Burress to give the Giants the lead.
Manning lobs it. Burress alone. Touchdown, New York. Brady steps up. Throws. Downfield, broken up. 2 seconds left as the Giants take over.
And they won, beating the Patriots They completed one of the most shocking Super Bowl wins ever. And this is where moments are made. Okay, the number one best Super Bowl, in my opinion, is Super Bowl 49. The New England Patriots beat the Seattle Seahawks 28-24. So, you got some good storylines in this game, in my opinion. The Seattle Seahawks, the defending NFC champion, hoping to make back-to-backs. The Seattle Seahawks, the defending Super Bowl champion, hoping to win back-to-back Super Bowls. They still have the Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson, and Marshawn Lynch, going up against the New England Patriots, who been almost 10 years since they won a Super Bowl. And Tom Brady had a lot of balls this year. It was 14-14 at half. Seahawks took a 24-14 lead early in the third quarter. Then Tom Brady threw 2 touchdown passes late to give the Patriots a lead. The Seahawks then started driving. You had one of the best catches in Super Bowl history.
Russell in the pocket. Russell for Curse, and that's broken up again. And is it? But
exactly what happened, isn't it?
Well, Curse goes for it. It's still not on the ground. It's still not on the ground. It's still. Well, look at that.
Oh my!
Phenomenal.
I can't believe he didn't get up and get in the end zone in time.
A great catch. Where the Patriots going to lose another game on a great catch. They give the ball to beast mode. Short.
On the left. Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Here, but he beats him to the punch, and I'm sorry, but I can't believe the call.
Me neither.
I cannot believe the call. You've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. You've got a guy that's been borderline unstoppable in this part of the field. I can't believe the call.
And there is Brady.
Malcolm Butler picks off Russell Wilson, and the Patriots win in what, in my opinion, is the greatest ending in Super Bowl history. Should the Seahawks probably have given it to Lynch? Yes, but I think that's what makes this game great, that we still are talking about it, even though it was almost 10 years ago. This game, in my opinion, had everything. Back and forth, great plays, memorable, awesome. 2 of the best teams we had seen. In my opinion, the best Super Bowl ever. Those were all the Super Bowls ranked. Let me know what you think. If you agreed, thank you. If not, get mad at me in the comments. Show some love and support, though. This took a while to make. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!